this is a really interesting area. It's beautiful. I can see a lot of growth behind us, but right where we're standing, I don't see a lot of understory. Can you explain this part to me?
Sure, Connie. This is what we call the Kettle Hole of Kettle Woods. And back when glaciers were here, it left big chunks of ice and carved out these depressions. There's about 9 of these throughout Kettle Woods. And so they're depressional areas that are pocket wetlands, or what we call vernal pools, that hold water from the melting snow and early spring rains, and then eventually that water evaporates into the summer months.
This has to be really, really an important piece of the ecosystem because water's vital. And I know for aquatic life, any frogs or salamanders, this has to be a real teeming hotbed of life in the early spring.
That's exactly right. These types of communities are very scarce in our county. We only have 2 forest preserves that have a kettle geology like this. And so when we get water in these, and you can see by some of the dark areas on the trees that surround it, we get a good 1.5 to 2 foot of water in here from the meltwaters. And then the salamanders come in from the brush where they've been hibernating in the rotting material, and they come out and they lay their eggs in around March. And then those eggs hatch out into larvae. And because there's no fish in here, that increases the reproductive success of those salamanders. And then later we have all sorts of frogs and toad species that do the same thing, come in, lay their eggs. And so the importance of how long the water stays here, what we call the residency time, is critical to the reproductive cycle of all those different amphibian species.
Well, you know, I've been by here like in July and stuff, and this looks pretty dry to me.
Exactly. So our objective of removing again, that curtain understory that surrounds the edge of this, those plants transpire water. It's like pumps. They just pump the water out of the ground more rapidly. So by reducing that, we can sustain water for longer periods of time, and thus the frog species that lay their eggs in June still have the water to run their reproductive cycle.
Well, and you know, now that you really think about it, the root systems on the plants that would replace that understory that you'd be removing, that's a much more deeper root system, a viable system that's going to support water being held deep into the earth more.
Exactly. The aquatic plants, the sedge community that's somewhat sparse in here, are more deeply rooted, conserve that water and moisture at the surface layer, and are very important. Also, what's really great about this is these kettle holes act as a huge sponge for all the rainwater. We've had some incredible rainstorms and the like, and we find that to be very important in holding that water for long periods of time.
You know, as I think about concerns of citizens and residents and balancing everything, any natural way to support the retention of stormwater has got to be a huge benefit for taxing bodies and for any kind of infrastructure construction, because it's less necessary to do that stormwater retention.
Exactly. The forest preserve really is a repository.
Yeah.
These native communities, once they're healthy, act as these huge sponges, and indeed they hold water in the vegetation, in the soils, in the shallow aquifers, and then release that water at much slower than the gutters, downspouts, and concrete piping that goes to our rivers.
Absolutely. So it saves money, improves the habitat, helps our biodiversity, a lot of benefits.
Absolutely.
I have to say that as a trail user, as you go along here, you can't see this area barely at all from the trail. It will be much more enjoyed, and the diversity of little plants as you approach it will really improve the whole setting.
That's a really important point. A lot of users, we've seen a couple trail users today, as you said, we're kind of buried in the curtain here outside the trail, and people often comment, why don't I see deer? Why don't I see the animals in the forest? And they're busy going down these trails. Well, all the animals, including humans, water is so critical.
Right.
And so these are the locations that those animals come to on a daily basis to get water. And once we remove this curtain, people will be able to view these animals at a distance.
And you're telling me there are 9 vernal pools here in this Kettle Moraine area?
That's correct.
This is a very special, precious habitat.